because I just want this to be a conversation. I don't have a presentation, but I can answer any of the questions you have. So you can put them in the chat, or you can say them out loud, like raise your hand maybe, and I can open that. I am an open book, so ask away. Yes, Paige.
I am wondering what you have done for childcare, especially when your kids are like younger than 3 or 4 before preschool.
Yes, so I was pregnant when I started my PhD program, though nobody knew it, right? And so I had my son right after our first year finished, and then I took my preliminary exams 2 weeks after. It was wild, but I lived to tell the tale. So what we did when I was in my program is my husband cut down his hours to part-time. And so he worked part-time in a physical therapy clinic, just doing aid work. And then he worked part-time, or then was part-time home with our child. One perk of being a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints is that you get a pretty quick group of people around you when you move to a new place. And so I was able to use ward members and paid them for childcare on the days that that my husband wasn't home. And so that's what I did in grad school. And then luckily in Utah, all my family's here. So I actually pay my mother to watch my kids now. But a lot of my friends and coworkers that have children utilize daycares. You can do a lot of research. There are good ones and there are bad ones. And you have to devote a lot of time to deciphering which is which. And that is a challenge, but a worthwhile one. So yeah, family, friends, ward members, daycares have all been in our mix of childcare. So there was a question. I would love to hear a quick overview of your education, career, and family story. So tell me if you want more details. I'm sure I could think of more. But I did my undergraduate, like I said, in sociology here at BYU. I actually did an internship in Uganda for 5 months. So I got engaged in March, left for Uganda in April, returned from Uganda in August, and got married a week after. I don't recommend it. I was extremely jet lagged and had a body full of parasites and don't remember a second of it and was throwing up the whole honeymoon, but you again live to tell the tale. So then I did a master's degree in sociology at BYU as well. And luckily I had mentors that were like, hey, you can actually do them together. So I looped them together so 5 years I left BYU with my master's degree. Then I went straight to start a PhD at UC Berkeley. And actually I was going to take a break. My husband, as I mentioned, is a physical therapist. So when he was graduating with his undergraduate degree, it's the same year I graduated from my master's program, and he applied widely to a bunch of physical therapy schools. I thought I owed it to my mentor to at least apply to one school. So I applied to Berkeley just because I thought I owed it to them. He applied widely. I got accepted and he didn't anywhere. And so we're like, okay, change of plans. And so that's what took us to Berkeley. He got accepted to physical therapy school 3-ish years later in Utah. So we moved back to Utah and I finished my dissertation remotely, which was an adventure, but it worked pretty well because most of my data and stuff is on a computer anyway. So you can do that from anywhere. So I finished that and then I applied to BYU to work here. As I was finishing up my program, I applied, or I did my interview, and I had my child 2 weeks after that. So I was very pregnant when I interviewed here. Definitely had dreams about my water breaking during my presentations. None of it happened. I got a job, and here I am, 3 years in, thriving, I would say, so most of the time. I think that's a pretty good detail. Okay. I'm here with my daughters in high school. What are some things that would be good for them to know? Oh, those pressures are real. It's so pervasive that we just want to keep everybody in this really narrow box. And my advice to you is shatter the box. Think big. Think like, what do I want to do with my life? What fulfills me? Because if you are fulfilled and you are happy and thriving, then your partner and your children will be happy and thriving as well. Because you got to make decisions for yourself. If your career is all of a sudden taking over and your family is no longer thriving, then you can readjust, you can reel it in, you can change paths, but shatter the box. That's my, like, just think bigger, think expansive, think, what do I want to do? And you don't need to justify it for anybody who's giving you this pressure, which isn't always easy because the pressure is still there. Even if you're like, I'm shattering a box, everyone get out my way. Like they're still going to say like, reel it in, stop shattering boxes. I like the box. Who cares about them? Right? Easier said than done, but worthwhile. No, I did not know that I wanted to end up teaching. I'm a first generation college student. And so getting into BYU was even a shock for my family. I remember before I opened the email, my mom was like, don't get your hopes up. You probably won't get in. So I opened it up and I got in. And the key for me was finding a faculty mentor. I walked into my intro sociology class. I didn't know what sociology was, but I fell in love. And the professor then, still to this day, is my mentor. I email her all the time. I'm always kind of in conversation with her, like, how do you navigate this? What do you do? And so you need people in your corner. And so I didn't know I wanted to teach. I didn't know I wanted to get a PhD, but she told me once, she's like, hey, you could do this if you want. You know, you can take the time, you can do this, you can teach. And so they let me teach an undergraduate course when I was a master's student, and that really solidified my interests. And I loved research. And so that's what kind of sealed the deal. Okay, I love all these questions. So no other, well, I guess I did have other aspirational careers. When I started sociology, I really wanted to get into nonprofit work. I have minors in international development and nonprofit management. And I still kind of keep tabs on some nonprofits. My uncle is the director at Choice Humanitarian. And so I kind of just keep my fingers in all of the different things I love, and I can do research on nonprofits. And so it's all still kind of in there. Oh, the imposter syndrome is real, and I feel it nearly every day. And I have to keep giving myself pep talks that say, I belong here. I did the work. I am qualified and I belong here. And I have to keep telling myself that, because that's always been one of my weaknesses, right? Is this kind of self-doubt. And it's really easy to doubt yourself when you have students that are doubting you, or even like my parents are just kind of like, how was school today? It's like, it's not school, it's work. Like, it's different. I'm not studying anymore. I'm researching. It's just different, right? How did my, let's see. So my husband has had a journey with school, right? Not getting accepted. He handled that really well, surprisingly, because we had a clear path. I think if we were in limbo, it might have been a bit tricky for all of us, but he handled that really well. But he is not, he's just as susceptible to these gender norms as I am. He lost a job because of the company's kind of restructuring about a year after his schooling. And we had an income, right? I still had my job and our health insurance was still with me. So we didn't really, it wasn't that big of a shock, but he still has this breadwinner, provider, presider narrative that's been told to him his whole life. So that was hard, right? And we weren't shook as much as most families would be when the male loses their job. But you still have this narrative, and so it's still hard. So it's still tricky, right? People are like, how's your sugar mama? Like, people still bug him about it a little bit. Like, how are you going to start staying home soon, right? They like challenge this masculinity, because we've lumped them so closely together that providing monetarily more than your spouse is what defines a man. And shatter that box too. Put it in the shattered boxes pile, right? Like, I'm all for shattering the boxes. As a white guy with an ambitious and time-intensive career, how can I avoid being part of the problem? So there's a lot of ways. So this is the question from Sam Kemp, so you can read it. There's a lot of ways. The first is just really communicating with your partner and making sure they're fulfilled in the roles that they're filling as well, right? Do they feel fulfilled in their career path or in their roles at home? Because guess what? If your partner, and I'm assuming that you have a partner, right? I'm assuming that with that question. So this is kind of for any case, but if you have a partner that's at home with children, for example, that is a job. That is like a full-time, exhausting, hardworking job. So Sam, you still got to do your fair share of the housework, right? Because there are 3 jobs. There's the out of the family providing money, there's the childcare, and then there's the housework. And the housework and childcare are not the same thing, right? They are not the same thing. And so that is one way to show that different family styles can matter, is by doing yours differently than the ones you've done before. Even with a demanding career, you still come home and you still engage in this work that needs to be done. I don't think I answered that very well, but it's more just saying, let other people think big too, and let them know that there are options and this is what works for your family, but there are many options. Advice for finding a mentor. Is there a professor that is resonating with you, that you like their courses, you like how they're speaking, you like what they do? Or is there someone in a field that you are interested in? Do you know somebody who knows somebody that can connect you? You kind of have to do some work to get a mentor, because some people are busy and some fields are less inclined to take the time to provide that mentorship. And so you kind of have to dig. If you're seeking a mentor in a university, and they better be ready and willing to help you. That's a part of our job, right? That's probably my favorite part of my job, to be honest. But so you have to kind of do the work and find someone who resonates with you. And then if it's not working for you, find a way to kind of back out of it, like you're not in a flaky way, but just in a way that you really are trying to find something that will benefit you and get you where you need to go. And most professors, at least, wouldn't be offended. They would hopefully connect you with other resources that could help you better, that could be more fulfilling for you and your needs. Why is it so rare for women to ask for raises as opposed to men? This is called socialization. Women are taught to not ask for things. They're taught that if asking for things makes them needy, it makes them weak, it makes them a burden. And we've taught women to be small and busy and productive, but small, right? And not intrusive. And asking for a raise is intrusive. It's something that makes somebody change their will and their desires. And we don't teach women, A, that they should do that, but B, that how to do that, how to ask those questions, but C, to the person to open that door for women to respond and not think of them as needy, rather to say, hey, you have done the work and you are seeing that work needs to be more validated, and how can I, as your employer, validate that? And so we see that with TAs and RAs. Men are more likely to ask for those positions than women are. We see that in applying for jobs. Men are more likely to apply for jobs that they meet half the qualifications, and women will not apply for a job unless they meet nearly all of the qualifications. So this is in a lot of different spheres. We're just not teaching women that break the box, right? Just do the things, apply for the job. What's the harm? But we say there's a little bit too much harm for women, right? How do you navigate marital relationships when you have children and both parents work? How do you avoid burnout? Burnout's real. And this is one we're still navigating. I teach about a article that just came out last year that looks at cognitive labor. and talks about this cognitive labor, meaning seeing needs in your family, anticipating problems, finding solutions to those problems, making the decisions on how to solve those problems, and then monitoring the effects. So my child has crazy hair day at school tomorrow. Now I have to make a decision. Am I going to engage? How am I going to engage? Do I have to go buy something? Then you make, right? So all of this is this kind of cognitive labor idea. And so that's most heavily reliant on women. So that's where a lot of burnout comes from, is because most women engage in that cognitive labor. Men, the piece that they kind of start to engage in is more the decision-making part, but the anticipatory work, the kind of picking solutions and monitoring resides with women. So communication is the key to avoiding burnout. You've got to sit down and say, these are all the tasks that need to be done. Who's going to do them? And that's a part of the labor too, right? Is initiating this process. And me and my partner have not figured it out well yet, right? Because I have a more flexible job than he does. And so we use that as our fallback. We say, okay, of course, I'm going to take time off to go to the dentist appointment with our kids because my job is flexible and I can do that. And his is, that's not the case. And so we fall back on a lot of these kind of gender norms and brush it off as it's just natural based on our jobs. Does that make sense? And so it's easy to fall back on gender norms and disguise them as something else in some cases. So communication is a negotiating and figure out what's best for your family. How do you have effective communication? That definitely depends on the partnership. My friend was just telling me yesterday about this deck of cards that lists all these different household and childcare and work things that need to be done. You go through the deck and find all the cards that are relevant to you, and then you literally hand them to each partner and say, okay, you have selected the laundry card, so you're in charge of laundry. And of course, I will help, but you need to ask me to help if you need it. But you are mentally in charge, and I am turning off when it comes to laundry. So that's one way. That's a very tangible way if that's something you need, more concrete. My partner and I do it better than others at sometimes. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we figure it out, right? It's how to communicate. I wish I knew, but it depends on the partnership. I love school and work, but want to be home with my kids someday as a part of my future, going from the fast-paced college. I don't know about kind of that transition. I haven't done it exactly. You can do part-time work. You can do freelance work if you still want to keep your toes in this kind of professional field. But also you can find ways to thrive at home with your children. If you are a person that seeks production, then find ways to do that in your home through projects or organizing groups, or you can find other ways to validate those needs in yourself. Because from the periods of life where I've stayed at home, it's hard, it's challenging, it feels isolating, and maybe to some people more than others, right? It just depends on yourself. So you've just got to figure out a way to thrive in that dynamic, just like you do in a work one, right? What do I need in order to feel fulfilled, and how can I structure my home life accordingly? With the caveat that things are just hard sometimes, right? Sometimes things are just hard and you can't find ways to be fulfilled in all of the things all the time. And so acknowledging that, realizing it's a time and a season, and then you can navigate that when that season's over, if that makes sense. Oh, there's so many good questions. Anyone can leave at any time. I have until 12:30 when my class starts, so I can keep answering these, but again, you can leave whenever you need to. Any insights into benefits, downfalls of working from home with kids versus separating work from home? I don't think I could have spoken to this prior to the pandemic, but have been in the thick of, I'm in my bedroom right now, right? I'm in the thick of working from home. The benefits is convenience to some degree, right? That you can kind of shift your time if you need to. The downfalls is just the overlap is always present, and you really need to set clear boundaries. Work is done during these hours, during this time. My children will be doing this. Oh, I don't even know. I haven't done it enough without childcare. Most of the time I've had childcare. And so my experience is very different. I don't even know. There are so many benefits and barriers. Sometimes it's just the only thing you can do. So that's a benefit, right? You're making it work. But also that demand is immense to try to navigate children and their needs. Or my coworker is at home with her dogs and a couple puppies, and those are needs, right? There are things you have to balance that aren't on your radar when you're at work, because you have the time and the distance that are separating those things. So again, I can't speak to all of them, but there are many and vary based on where you find yourself working and how many kids and their ages and such. How do you deal with the judging at church with not following the traditional provider nurturer family dynamic? To be honest, I've gotten this more at work than I do at church. Most people at church are like, oh, you work, moving on. But some of my students have given me pushback, like, hey, you don't belong here. Whether in like they're literally saying something like that or just in their demeanor. Sometimes I handle it better than others. Sometimes I just can brush it off and say, like, hey, personal revelation's a thing, right? And we're doing what's best for our family. Sometimes I wallow in a little bit. I had a student tell me, get a testimony of the proclamation and go home. That was their student review. So I had to process that one a little bit, because it hurts me more for them and for other people that we hold people so accountable to these kind of, I don't even know, just these boxes that shouldn't really exist. But also I showed you all these trends that they can't exist in most scenarios, right? Most people can't get a job where one earner is sufficient. And lots of people don't want that type of dynamic in their family. And so I just wanted to tell the student, like, what's so wrong? You know, why do you think my children aren't being nurtured just because I'm not with them during the day? I also had a student once stand in the back of the classroom after Condoleezza Rice. I was showing a clip of Condoleezza Rice saying that that we need more women in politics. And the student stood up and said, I hate this. I think all women should stay home. My mother stayed home. All women should stay home. And I wanted to tell this, well, we got in a really good conversation after this, just saying, I really hope that works for you and your partner, you know, and that is a fulfilling situation. And I hope you never lose your job or never get sick or never get a divorce or never get any of these things. And I hope there's never a recession or a pandemic, right? We can now add that to the list that I didn't mention a couple of years ago, that this works for you. Or I had a niece tell me, hey, right after she graduated, she's like, I'm not interested in college. Like, I really just want to get married and have kids. I was like, well, listen, the median age of marriage is 28, 20 kind of 4 if you're in Utah. But like all of these things, like it just doesn't work like that. To plan like that doesn't work anymore, right? Infertility is a thing, divorce. Oh, there's just so much more, right? And we don't give people the expanse to think about other options, good options and ones that you're kind of thrown into. Did you discuss your specific educational and career? Yes, me and my husband talked about this all the time. We knew that he wanted to be a physical therapist and that I wanted to get a PhD when we met. And so that was always been a part of our story. We kind of look at some of our friends who are still trying to navigate careers and find ourselves really lucky that we both knew what we wanted and it actually worked out. So I think that's rare, but yes, we both communicated that really early on, and he has always been on board with that. That was never, he met me knowing that, right? One of the first things he said to me, because I met him playing flag football, he's like, you're playing like a girl. And I sat him down. I was like, do not say that to me again. I didn't actually say it like that because, flirting and such, but I was like, no, that's a limiting kind of notion and don't say it. Have you ever struggled with not being with your children all the time when they're young? Yes and no. I'm with them in the mornings, and I go to work really early. I work generally from about 7 to 3. And so I'm with them from 3 to bedtime. And when they're in school, that's actually the times that they're home. So I've been able to structure my day pretty accordingly. But I do remember missing like my son's birthday and getting a video from him, like getting an ice cream cone with my mom on his birthday. But you know what? Both my kids have so many people that love them and support them and fulfill their lives. I've actually given them a community. I've given them a lot of people to love them in addition to my love. And I've learned to see the positives in that and the benefits and just letting more people love them and see them in their day-to-day life, because I see plenty of it as I feel it. It's exhausting. By bedtime, I'm like, bedtime, like, yes, freedom again. But then you wake them up in the morning and you love them again, right? It's like, so yes, I do feel bad sometimes, but I honestly have a flexible job and flexible hours that I've been to all the things and done all the things. So I think that was it for the questions that were on here. So any kind of last minute ones? Okay, I just want to kind of wrap it up super quick and say, if you want to stay home, if you want to work, hopefully the world aligns in a way that you can do what you want, right? But my big takeaway is to just think big, be creative, make sure your dreams and your goals and the way you're structuring your life is in a way that isn't limited by something, right? By religion, by gender norms, by something, right? Because we know that there's so many other limitations that might come your way, but don't let it be yourself, right? Please don't let it be gender norms, right? That's like the one that I think you can shatter a little bit more. Just think big, right? And then hope the world aligns in a way that supports it. So I'm going to put my email in the chat. Please take a sociology class. I would be happy to see all of you there. I'm teaching a new world populations class in the fall if gender and intro to sociology aren't up your alley. So email me if you have any questions. I would be happy to kind of connect you to resources that you may need. This is tricky stuff and you need to talk about it often. I needed people to talk through it with, and so I'd be happy to pay it forward. Okay, that's all I got.